Abnormal development. So Adler believed that people are what they make of themselves. So in abnormal development, the creative power endows humans within certain limits with the freedom to be either psychologically healthy or unhealthy, and to follow either a useful or useless style of life. So, according to Adler, the general description of this are the one factor underlying all types of maladjustments is underdeveloped social interest. Besides, lacking social interest, neurotics tend to set their goals too high, live in their own private world, and have a rigid and dogmatic style of life. And lastly is the maladjusted people set extravagant goals as an overcompensation for exaggerated feelings of inferiority. External factors in maladjustment. So why do some people create maladjustments? So Adler noticed or recognized three contributing factors, and any of which is suitably to contribute to abnormality, which are the exaggerated physical deficiencies, pampered style of life, and the neglected style of life. So people with exaggerated physical deficiencies sometimes develop exaggerated feelings of inferiority because they overcompensate for their inadequacy. So it is tend to be overly concerned and lack consideration for others, and convinced that life's major problems can be solved only in a selfish manner. So people with this is they must be accompanied by accentuated feelings or inferiority. So, pampered style of life. People who have a pampered style of life have weak social interest. They expect others to look after them, overprotect them, and satisfy their needs. Pampered children have not received too much love, rather they feel unloved. They only see the world with private vision and believe that they are entitled to be first in everything and not receive too much love, and they have anxiety or oversensitive characteristic. So people with neglected style of life is people who feel unloved and unwanted creates a neglected style of life. So people with this style of life is experiences a strong sense of envy towards the success of others. They are more suspicious and more likely to be dangerous to others. People with this also is abused and mistreated develops social interest, which tend to create a neglected style of life. Adler believed that people create patterns of behavior to protect their exaggerated sense of defense mechanisms, and these protected devices called the safeguarding tendencies. There are three common safeguarding tendencies, which are the excuses, aggression, and depreciation. So each designed to protect a person's present style of life and to maintain a fictional, elevated feeling of self-importance. First is the excuses. Excuses is the most common of the safeguarding tendencies, which are typically expressed in the yes, but, or if only format. Yes, but is used when people first state what they claim they would like to do, then they follow with an excuse. Example of this is, yes, I would like to go in college, but my children demand too much of my attention. And if only, it is the same excuse phrased but in different way. Example of this is if only my husband were more supportive, I would have advanced faster in my profession. So these excuses protect a weak but artificially inflated sense of self-worth. Next is aggression. Some people use aggression to safeguard their exaggerated superiority complex to protect their fragile self-esteem. So, safeguarding through aggression may take the form of depreciation, accusation, or the self-accusation. First is the depreciation. It is the tendency to undervalue of other people's achievements and to overvalue one's own. Example of this is the only reason why Frandy gets the job I applied for is because he is an African American. So, this safeguarding tendency is evident in such aggressive behaviors, such as criticism and the gossip. So, in my example, there is an aggressive behavior in criticism and gossip. Next is the accusation. Accusation is the tendency to blame others for one's failures and to seek revenge, thereby safeguarding one's own tenuous self-esteem. Example of this is, I wanted to be an artist, but my parents forced me to go to medical school. Now I have a job that makes me miserable. So there is a tendency to blame others for one's failures. So the third neurotic aggression is the self-accusation. Self-accusation is marked by self-torture and guilt. Self-accusation is people devalue themselves in order to inflict suffering on others. So, while protecting their own magnified feelings of self-esteem, some people use self-torture, including the depression and suicide, as means of hurting people who are close to them. Example of this is, I feel distressed because I wasn't nicer to my grandmother while she was still living. Now it's too late. So, in my example, there is a guilty feeling. So, the third safeguarding tendency is the withdrawal. People run away from difficulties or safeguarding through distance. So there are 4 modes of safeguarding through withdrawal. First is the moving backward. Second is the standing still. Third is hesitating. And the fourth is the constructing obstacles. So moving backward. Moving backward is the tendency to safeguard one's fictional goal of superiority by psychologically reverting to a more secure period of life. So, it is designed to elicit sympathy. Psychological distance can also be created by standing still. It is similar to moving backward, but in general it is not severe. People who stand still simply do not move in any direction. So, they safeguard their fictional aspirations because they never do anything to prove that they cannot accomplish their goals. So, closely related to standing still is the hesitating. Some people hesitate or vacillate when faced with difficult problems. So, their procrastinations eventually give them the excuse, it's too late now. Although hesitating may appear to other people to be self-defeating, it allows emotionally unstable individuals to preserve their inflated sense of self-esteem. So last is the constructing obstacles. Constructing obstacles is which the least severe of the withdrawal safeguarding tendencies. Some people build a straw house to show that they can knock it down. So, if they fail to hurdle the barrier, they can always resort to an excuse. By overcoming the obstacle, they protect their self-esteem and their prestige. Comparison of safeguarding tendencies with defense mechanisms. So, in Adler's safeguarding tendencies, it is limited mostly to the construction of a neurotic style of life, while in Freud's defense mechanisms, it is found in everyone. In Adler, protect the person's fragile self-esteem from public disgrace, while in Freud's defense mechanisms, it is protect the ego from the pain of anxiety. So in Adler, can be partly conscious, while in Freud, it is only operated on an unconscious level. So, common types. In Adler, common types include the excuses and aggression. That there are three types under the aggression, which is the depreciation, accusation, and the self-accusation. Next is the withdrawal. So there are four modes that under of withdrawal, which are the moving backward, standing still, hesitating, and constructing obstacles. So the common types include in Freud's defense mechanisms are repression, reaction formation, displacement, fixation, regression, projection, interjection, and sublimation. Say the masculine protest. In contrast, Freud and Adler believe that the psychic life of a woman is essentially the same as that of men, and the male-dominated society is not natural, but rather an artificial product of historical development. So according to Adler, cultural and social practices, not anatomy, influence many men and women to overemphasize the importance of being manly, a condition he called the masculine protest. So the origins of the masculine protest. So men are frequently taught early that being masculine means being courageous, strong, and dominant. So both men and women place an inferior value in being woman. So the epitome of success for boys is to win, to be powerful, to be on top. So in contrast, girls often learn to be passive and to accept an inferior position in society. It overemphasizes on the importance of being manly, resulting from cultural and social influences, and women want the same things that men have. So women fight against their feminine roles. So developing a masculine orientation and becoming competitive, it is revolt by adopting a passive role, becoming exceedingly helpless and obedient, and others become resigned to the belief that they are inferior human being, acknowledging men's privileged position by shifting responsibilities to them. So each of these modes of adjustment results from cultural and social influences, not from inherent psychic difference between the two genders. So Adler, Freud, and the masculine protest. So previously, Freud believed that anatomy is destiny, and that he regarded woman as the dark continent for psychology. Moreover, near the end of his life, he was still asking, what does a woman want? But according to Adler, these attitudes toward women would be evidence of a person with a strong masculine. In contrast to Freud's views on women, Adler assumed that women, because they have the same physiological and psychological needs as men, want more or less the same things that men want. So these opposing views in femininity were magnified in the woman of Freud and Adler that they chose to marry. So Freud and Adler differences. So by Freud, man is motivated by sex and aggression, while in Adler, man is motivated by social influences and striving for superiority. In Freud, people have no choice on shaping their personality, while in Adler, people are largely responsible for who they are. In Freud, present behavior is caused by the past, while in Adler, present behavior shaped by the future. So lastly, by Freud, emphasis in the unconscious, while in Adler, It is only those people who are usually aware of what they are doing and why. Applications of individual psychology. So application of individual psychology is divided into four areas, which are the family constellation, early recollections, dream analysis, and the psychotherapy. Next is the accusation. Accusation is the tendency to blame others for one's failures and to seek revenge, thereby safeguarding one's own tenuous self-esteem. Example of this is, I wanted to be an artist, but my parents forced me to go to medical school. Now I have a job that makes me miserable. So there is a tendency to blame others for one's failures. So the third neurotic aggression is the self-accusation. Self-accusation is marked by self-torture and guilt. Self-accusation is people devalue themselves in order to inflict suffering on others. So, while protecting their own magnified feelings of self-esteem, some people use self-torture, including the depression and suicide, as means of hurting people who are close to them. Example of this is, I feel distressed in I feel distressed because I wasn't nicer to my grandmother while she was still living. Now it's too late. So in my example, there is a guilty feeling. So the third, to gain an understanding of patients' personality, Adler would ask them to reveal their early recollections. Although he believed that the recalled memories yield clues for understanding patients' style of life, he did not consider these memories to have a causal effect. So earliest memories provided valuable insights into their unique styles of life. Early recollections are always consistent with people's present style of life. So highly anxious patients will be often project their current style of life onto their memory of childhood experiences by recalling fearful and anxiety-producing events. And self-confident people tend to recall memories that include pleasant relations with other people. So dream analysis. Although dreams cannot foretell the future, they can provide clues for solving future problems. Nevertheless, the dreamer frequently does not wish to solve the problem in a productive manner. So dream analysis, it is a major technique for understanding each patient's personality. So Adler believes that a person's dreams are determined by his or her goal of superiority. So dreams are controlled by his or her unique style of life, and it is provide glimpses of the future and thus suggest potential solutions to the person's problems. So Adler, Freud, and the masculine protest. So previously, Freud believed that anatomy is destiny and that he regarded woman as the dark continent for psychology. Moreover, near the end of his life, he was still asking, what does a woman want? But according to Adler, these attitudes toward women would be evidence of a person with a strong masculine. In contrast to Freud's views on women, Adler assumed that women, because they have the same physiological and psychological needs as men, want more or less the same things that men want. So these opposing views in femininity were magnified in. So next is the related research. So early childhood and health-related issues. Psychologists have been studying health-related issues for a number of years, but only recently have these topics become of interest to Adlerian psychologists. So, Adler's early childhood experience with illnesses and trauma provided the basis for his theory of organ inferiority and inferiority and feelings. So, Adler's theory of inferiority, superiority, and social feeling can be applied to explain health-related behaviors such as eating disorders and binge drinking. So each person has a weak area in his or her body, organ inferiority, that tends to be the area where illness takes place, the stomach, head, or heart. So early recollections and counseling outcomes. So if early recollections are fictional constructions amenable to present shifts in a person's style of life, then early recollections should change as style of life changes. So it is the projections of the present day self onto the past, and this led to the use of early recollections as technique for identifying lifestyle or personality themes and unconscious goals that explain behavior. So the concept of humanity of individual psychology is that people are basically self-determined, people shape their personalities, and the building material of personality is provided by heredity and environment, and creative power shapes this material and puts it to use. Key terms and concepts. So the main concepts of Adler's theory are social interest, holism, lifestyle, goals or directionality, and equality. And every individual represents a unity of personality, and the individual then fashions that unity. Therefore, if one can change one's concept of self, they can change the picture being painted. And his individual psychology is based on humanistic model of man. And that is all about the Adler's theory of individual psychology. I hope you have learned something. Thank you.